this presentation is related to the French infrastructure for biobanks. We will deal with the why we set up a French infrastructure for biobanks, not only in France, but also in other countries like Italy, Germany, Austria, etc. And how do we assess the efficiency of this infrastructure? So just to go back to the basics of biobanks, biobanks are entities that harbor biological samples, that is DNA, RNA, tumors, brain slices. We use these samples to understand the pathology of many of the diseases. And we should say that our current knowledge on disease is mainly based on systematic investigation of biological samples and also medical data. This has started very early, around 300 before Christ in Alexandria, and was pursued all over the centuries. It was really developed in the 16th century with the anatomical study of the human body, where medical surgeons at that time tried to understand the pathology of many diseases by dissecting the human body. In the 19th century, Zeiss developed the microscope, so this allowed the use of this instrument to study the cellular level of pathology, of different pathologies. And in the 20th century and 21st century, this developed what we call biobanks. You have here photos of two of the largest biobanks in Germany, and there's other one in China, harboring hundreds of thousands of samples coming from patients of different disease. So by making use of these samples, of these resources, several technologies like genomics, proteomics, imaging techniques has achieved major progress in the last decade in the understanding of several complex disease. However, despite these major understanding of the disease, there are significant issues and limitations which are restricting the impact of translational research, that is, from the lab to the bedside, and the broad implementation of these technologies in the health field. So what are these limitations? What are the bottlenecks that are hampering the translational research? You have here a list of these bottlenecks: sample shortage, quality of samples and related data, fragmentation of research, redundancy in research, ethical and legal issues, and sustainability of infrastructures. In different modules of this master, you will see a number of these issues being treated, like the sustainability of infrastructure or the fragmentation of research. For this presentation, I will just focus on the sample shortage, mainly to illustrate why we need a national infrastructure for biobanks and why we need a European infrastructure for biobanks. We have here a very good example of an international project related to cancer. This was published in one of the most important journals in medicine, Nature Medicine, in 2007. And the authors of this paper, which are implicated in this international cancer genome problem, said that they are struggling with sample shortage. They are lacking samples to pursue their project, despite a large number of dead from cancer. And here you have an example: 700,000 cancer deaths per year in 2007 in the United States. So this sample shortage comes from the fragmentation of research, ethical and legal issues, funding, technical issues, follow-up. This is one argument that pushed many people to look for a way, a solution to this problem. How do we get samples to pursue the research? Another point was brought up by a simulation done by the team of Paul Burton and published in International Journal of Epidemiology in 2009. And in this study, they represented the time in years to collect 1,000, 2,500, 5,000, 10,000, or 20,000 patients for a number of diseases like diabetes, coronary death, Alzheimer's disease, stroke, different types of cancer. And we can take one example, for instance, for stomach cancer, which is the last one, to collect 1,000 patients, samples from 1,000 patients, you need about 17 years. If you look at bladder cancer, you need for 1,000 patients 12 years. If you look at breast cancer, which is a very common cancer in the population, to collect 10,000 patients, you need about 18 years. Now, to understand the genomics, to understand the genetics underlying many of these diseases, you do studies on DNA coming from thousands of patients. And if you want to understand what are the genetics of breast cancer, you need about 5,000 to 7,000 patients with breast cancer, and that is about 10 to 12 years to collect these samples. So it makes it very hard for a researcher or for a research institution or for a hospital to collect samples in a very short time, that is 3 or 4 years, which is the funding time of several projects in Europe and the United States. So one way to collect thousands of samples in a reasonable time frame is to collect these samples from different centers. And when we talk about collecting samples from different centers, we need to have the same collection standard, the same standard operating procedures. We need to harmonize the collection procedure. We need to harmonize the preparation of the sample, the storage of the sample, so that we have a similar quality of samples, so that we can study 10,000 patients or samples from 10,000 patients with similar quality. This is what several scientific societies called for, like the NCI. They mentioned that in a very important report that biological samples are number one roadblockers. The OECD, WHO, and the European Science Foundation called for standards for biological resources centers or biobanks, and the need of integrating such biobanks. And upon these different reports coming from scientific societies, a group of experts commissioned by the European Union, this group is called ESFRI, which you know because many of your infrastructures are related to this ESFRI group, proposed to set up a number of infrastructures in different fields, in different scientific fields, and one of them is a research infrastructure for biobanks. And this research infrastructure for biobank should be set up according to this group of experts at the national level in each country of the EU, but also at the European level. So this was started in 2008 by funding the preparatory phase of research infrastructure for biobanks at the European level, and in many countries, France, Italy, Germany, Austria, Sweden, etc., there was also an effort to set up a research infrastructure for biobanks at the national level. I will concentrate on the French infrastructure for biobanks, so division of the French infrastructure for biobanks, which is entitled Biobank, which is biobanks in French. So the vision is to sustain or to sustainably secure access to biological resources required for research. The mission of this French infrastructure is to improve prevention, diagnosis, and treatment of disease, and to promote public health. So the strategy to reach these goals is to set up expert services to meet the needs of the users. So we set up, after assessing the needs of the users, we set up a number of expert services like quality of samples, biosafety, biosecurity. This is one expert service. Another one dealing with legal, ethical, and societal issues. A third one related with IT and database interoperability. Another service deals with methodology, help in methodological procedures and biostatistical tools. A one-stop access gateway to biological resources that would allow to collect samples from different biobanks or hospitals through a one-stop access, training and dissemination service. And we also built a number of innovative technical platforms, but I will not deal with this last point in this presentation. So we did start in 2010 with 64 biobanks, 64 French biobanks that joined the project, and we ended up in 2015 with 85 biobanks, which represents, in my opinion, more than 90% of the biobanks in France. And after the construction or the setting up of these expert services, the infrastructure was operational. And since 2014, it replied to requests from more than 260 research projects, and it trained 374 individuals, being researchers, medical doctors, quality managers, lawyers, or ethicists. In the second part of this presentation, I would like to focus on the efficiency of the infrastructure for biobanks. How a well-managed infrastructure could provide efficiency. How a well-managed biobanking infrastructure would provide efficiency. Well, the first point would be through accelerated experimental design. Help researchers, help consortia setting up research projects with great quality, with excellent quality. So for this, you need greater confidence of partners from either the public or the private field. You need also to facilitate power calculation by reducing the number of errors that can step up from either methodologies or the use of statistical tools. One of the most important ways to provide efficiency is to accelerate the collection or the accrual of samples. Remember that we need thousands of samples to understand the genetics of many of disease. So the collection of these samples from different sites, a multi-site accrual of samples, is an indicator of the efficiency of the infrastructure. Also that goes with the sample is the experimental data. So an accelerated accrual increase of experimental data of good quality is an indicator of the efficiency of the infrastructure. You can link also to platform technologies, because when you talk about genomics or proteomics, these are done in very specific platforms, in very specific technological platforms. It's not done in your lab. So you need to link to these platforms and to collect data from these platforms. And also increase the resilience. That is, in case of disaster, you have a second site storage. In case of fire in the building or a storm in the region, you have a second site storage so that you don't lose samples you have put years to collect. Emergency staff cover access to alternative equipment in case of. Other indicators of the infrastructure is efficiency is related to reduced capital requirements, division of labor for sample processing between sites, reduced labor requirements, sharing with some administration, reducing staff with shared capabilities, reduced overheads, shared training, shared service contracts, shared consumables, shared dissemination, shared equipment. This is a very important point, which is related not only to the efficiency but also to the sustainability of the infrastructure. We will not deal with the sustainability in this presentation. It will be a part of another presentation later on. But please keep this in mind when we talk about sustainability. It's not only how we get money into the infrastructure, but it could be also how we can reduce costs by setting up infrastructure. And please remember that as with any infrastructure, the benefits are not fully realized until it is complete. Now, how to ensure the infrastructure success? The first point is to adopt roadmaps for research and innovation. A roadmap is very important. No vision, no success, no sustainability. And in this roadmap, you should also include the infrastructure. You should build consensus with public engagement to facilitate sustainability because you need public support for that. You should build consensus with researchers and also enhance competition in ideas. You should build consensus with national and international funders and also with all the partners from the public and the private field. So to ensure also the success of the infrastructure, you should build hub before spokes, but this is in ideal conditions, but because in many cases you have these centers already being present. There are a network of research institutions or research centers, and you build the infrastructures on top. Nonetheless, you should implement standards in these infrastructures and the centers related to the infrastructures, standards to quality management, but also standards related to the product you are using or you are producing, or the samples, the biological samples you are preparing or you are using in your research. You should ensure early cost saving. So you need to have a very good financial plan. You should have a very good business plan from the very beginning, which includes cost saving and reduction in cost. And you should ensure that spoke centers can support many research topics. So a spoke requires ownership by local researchers in many specialties. In other modules, as I said, we will go in detail with the sustainability issue, the financial sustainability issue, but not only the financial sustainability issue. Thank you very much for your attention.